Welcome, everybody. This is going to be our first group of notes on the cardiovascular system. We're obviously going to do this quick, so I'm going to get right to it. So everybody knows they have a heart. Everybody knows it pumps blood. It is a little remarkable how much blood it pumps, 7,000 liters through the body every day. Obviously, you don't have 7,000 liters of blood because the blood circulates, and so it continues to be recycled and recycled. A heart contracts 2.5 billion times. That's a lot. There is a myth out there that the heart has a limited number of beats, and that's not true. So you actually do think it is a good thing to actually get some exercise and get your heart rate up. It doesn't shorten your life by doing exercise. And all the blood vessels are included in that cardiovascular system as well. So functions of the heart, pretty obvious: generate blood pressure and move blood throughout the vascular system. It has to go one way. That's the way it works. There are other animals in the animal kingdom that have blood that moves in multiple directions or kind of just sloshes around in their body, but in all mammals there is a one-way system. And very importantly, the heart needs to regulate that blood flow. And so when you are in need of more blood flow, it increases, and when it decreases when you need less. And this includes the ability to restrict certain parts of the body. So when you get cold, for example, your fingers and your toes, the blood vessels will constrict, limiting blood flow to conserve the heat in your body. All right. So a lot of myths out there. So we'll start with size and location. The general way to understand the size of a heart is to make a fist, and that is the size of a typical heart. And this works really well because obviously somebody that is a larger person has a larger heart, but they also have a larger fist. So it generally works pretty well. Weighs less than a pound, and it spans from the second to fifth rib. So, just right there in your chest, upper chest. And this is the part that I think is the one big misconception. It is not on the left side of your body. It crosses the midline. It is really a centralized organ. However, the reason that you sort of see it more on the left side, it is 2/3 on the left and 1/3 on the right side. The reason that is because the left side is just bigger. The left side needs to be bigger because it's pumping blood out to the body, and the right side is only pumping blood to the lungs, which isn't quite as far away as your toes or your fingers. So that left side needs to be a lot bigger. Here is a nice little picture of the outside. It's very confusing at first. With all of these blood vessels up here at the top, it's very confusing as to what's going on. But generally speaking, you have two chambers at the top, the left and right atrium. Now, again, don't get confused because the left is on the right and the right's on the left, but that's because we're looking at this from the front. So imagine that you are staring at somebody that has, they're opening up their chest and you can see their heart. So this is the right side over here, left side over here. The atria, that's the plural, are much less significant. Especially when you do a dissection, you'll notice that they're just not as big or robust that you could totally not notice them. And then the ventricles are the large chambers, not in the volume that they can fit. The reason they're larger is that the walls are much thicker. It's where all the muscle is, and that's what does the pumping. You also will see these blood vessels on the outside. They're actually supplying the heart with blood flow, which is pretty important because the heart is a muscle and it needs lots and lots of oxygen. And if you don't get oxygen to your heart, watch out. That's a problem. That's what causes a heart attack most often, is a blockage in one of these arteries. All right, 4 chambers, 2 atria, 2 ventricles. The atria, again, are the smaller in terms of the wall thickness. They don't have a lot of ability to forcefully pump things. The ventricles are very strong, particularly the left ventricle. atria thin-walled. They basically, the design of the atria is to receive blood from the body and coming back to the heart. And it is really a storage chamber to store blood so it can fill the ventricles. So the ventricles are thick-walled, they pump blood. The right atrium is the part of the heart that is receiving blood from the body. So blood has gone out to everywhere in your body. It's now coming back into the right atrium, and then it goes into the right ventricle. The right ventricle is the pumping chamber, and that pumps the blood out to the lungs. The blood goes out to the lungs, and then obviously when it's there, it's going to pick up oxygen, and then it's going to get rid of its carbon dioxide, which is just as important. And then we're going to return back to the heart after we have oxygenated the blood to the left atrium, which receives blood from those pulmonary veins, and then goes into the left ventricle, which pumps the blood out to the body. And that's obviously the biggest chamber, the strongest chamber. This is the inside of the heart, and you can see here's a right atrium, left atrium, and you see these are the places that they actually receive blood. So the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, all coming from the upper and lower parts of the body. Here are these right and left pulmonary veins. These are the two ventricles. This one pumps out through there, which is the aorta. That's going out to the body. This one's going out to the lungs, and you notice right here it just branches, and this goes out to your left lung, and this goes out to your right lung. In order for this to work right, you need valves. So the blood needs to flow one direction. So there are 4 different valves, and there are 2 different types of valves. So there's the AV valves. The AV valves are the valves that are on top between the atrium and ventricle. And their job is to prevent blood from flowing back into the atria when the heart is contracting. So we want the blood to go out to the lungs and to the body, and we don't want it to go backwards. So that's where these right AV valves and left AV valves, they have different names actually. They are sometimes, the right AV valve is often called the tricuspid. It has 3 flaps. The bicuspid is the one on the left side. The bicuspid also has a more commonly used today name called the mitral valve. Bicuspid has 2 flaps. Then the other valves are the valves that are the blood flowing back through the atria. This is actually on the next slide. So AV valves have muscles because it's a really tough thing to prevent blood from flowing back into the atria. They actually have muscles called papillary muscles. They're inside the heart, and they're connected with these things called chordae tendineae, which are really strong tendons. And then we have the semilunar valves. Their job is to make sure that when the heart relaxes, that blood doesn't flow from the arteries leaving the heart back into the heart. And those valves are actually designed, if you've ever blown up a raft, the idea that you sort of like squeeze it and you blow into it and then you let it go and it prevents air from getting back out. That's the idea of a semilunar valve. It's just 2 flaps, and when you push blood through it, it opens up. And when you stop pushing, it closes. So it's a one-way valve, and it's held closed by the blood pressure. Blood vessels. So you guys all know of blood vessels. It's not anything new. You've heard of arteries and veins. There is still some confusion about it, but there is functional and structural differences between arteries and veins, and that's important. So the types of blood vessels. Arteries are the ones that are most commonly referred to. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. And the important thing about arteries is to understand that they need to withstand high blood pressure. They cannot be flexible, because if they were flexible, then every time your heart pumped, they would expand a little bit and then contract, and no blood would actually move anywhere. They actually need to be fairly rigid. And then once you move from the arteries, those are the big ones, you move into smaller things called arterioles. And they carry it into something called capillaries. Capillaries are where most of the exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and everything else to the cells. And then you start coming back, you start collecting those capillaries, and then those are venules, and then veins actually will carry that back. Veins have very low blood pressure because you've sent that through that really tiny little gaps. The pulmonary circuit, so this is the different loops of the heart circulation. The pulmonary loop is, the loops are essentially where it leaves the heart and comes back. And there's 3 loops, 2 main ones and 1 sort of side loop. The main loops are the pulmonary loop. This is going from the right side of the heart, the right ventricle, out to the lungs, pick up oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide, returned to the left side of the heart. Systematic loop is the idea of taking that blood that's just come from the lungs, sending it out to the body, okay, and providing the body with oxygen, picking up waste, and then it comes back to the heart. So this is leaving the left ventricle, coming back to the right side of the heart. Then the last loop is sort of a mini loop. It's off to the side, which is a coronary loop, this is the loop of blood that directly supplies blood to the heart. So it breaks off immediately. As soon as you leave the heart, in the aorta, at the base of the aorta, there are arteries that feed off of that and feed the heart with oxygen. So essentially the heart gets the freshest, best blood, which makes sense. And then it returns to the right side of the heart in its own veins, not shared with everything else. So it's its own little mini loop. So this is a good diagram. I honestly would suggest pausing here and sort of just going over it, but I want to try to hurry up so I get my 15 minutes in. So take a look at that and see if that makes sense. This also is a great idea. Just follow this little flow chart and it will show you sort of where blood is going. And again, I would suggest pausing for a second and just sort of working your way through that. And this is the coronary loop. It sort of shows you this is the arteries that break off of the aorta, feed the heart, and then it supplies those muscles with blood, and then these are the veins that return the blood directly to the right side of the heart. Blood. So blood is a suspended liquid matrix. It is transports vital substances, and everything from things you need to things that you need to get rid of. It also distributes heat. And most important, well, maybe not most importantly, but it's a huge important part of blood is regulating the pH and the osmotic balance, the salt and water balance in your body. And blood is about 8% of your body weight. So that's a pretty significant amount. And an adult is usually around 5 liters. Obviously, that varies by size. So this is what blood is made up of. So there's 2 components of blood, and you can find this when you actually spin down blood. You develop this into, if you put it into a centrifuge, it spins the blood real fast. All the solid parts go to the bottom, and then the liquid stuff is at the top. So the liquid stuff is called the plasma. And it's a little over half of what you get. It's mostly water. It's a lot of proteins, and they do everything from help maintain water balance. They help with your immune system. And most importantly, there's some proteins in there that help blood clotting. Most of the stuff in there is the stuff that is dissolved things like salts, sodium, chloride, magnesium. All those are very significant. Glucose is another important thing. Waste products, urea, that's what your urine is, and so that's what your kidneys are going to be doing, is getting that urea out of your blood. Gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen you don't use, but it's still in your blood, and hormones like insulin. These are the red blood cells, so these are the solids. The red blood cells carry oxygen. They're big bags of hemoglobin. Okay, I'm going to skip that. White blood cells are a part of your immune system, and they protect against disease. And then the last of the formed elements are these things called platelets, which look, when you look at them under the microscope, like dead cells, and it's almost basically what they are. But their job is specifically to help with blood clotting, so you don't bleed to death. So that is it, and I hope that we did our best, but that's all the time I had. So thanks, guys.